I was standing in my garage, organizing my toolbox for the weekend project, when I heard footsteps behind me. My nephew Marcus appeared in the doorway, that familiar nervous smile plastered across his face. 26 years old, and he still couldn't look me in the eye when something was bothering him. "Hey, Uncle Ray," he said, shoving his hands deep into his pockets. "Working on the deck this weekend?" "That's the plan," I replied, not looking up from the socket wrenches I was arranging. "Your aunt's been after me about it for months." He lingered there, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I could feel his eyes darting around the garage, landing on my toolbox, then away, then back again. After 30 years as a construction foreman, I'd learned to read body language like a blueprint. Something was off. "Need something, Marcus?" I asked, finally meeting his gaze. No, just saying hi." He gave me that smile again, the one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll let you get back to it." He turned to leave, but not before I caught the subtle movement. Quick hands, practiced motions. Something small slipped from his jacket into my toolbox, hidden beneath the top tray. He thought I was focused on the wrenches. He thought I hadn't noticed. But I had. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway before I approached the toolbox. My hands were steadier than I expected as I lifted the top tray. There, nestled between my drill bits and measuring tape, was a small plastic bag, white powder, maybe 2 ounces. My breath caught in my throat. I'd seen this before, not in my own garage, but in the lives I'd watched crumble from the sidelines. Construction sites are full of stories about guys who started using, guys who thought they had it under control until they didn't. But this wasn't just any guy. This was Marcus, the kid I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd hired for summer jobs when his own father disappeared, the young man who'd just started getting his life together after dropping out of college 3 years ago. I stood there, staring at that bag, and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't random. This was calculated. He'd planted evidence in my garage, in my tools, where I'd be carrying them to job sites, where dogs might sniff, where cops might search if someone tipped them off. My nephew was trying to frame me. The question was why, and what I was going to do about it. I carefully closed the toolbox and went inside. My wife, Patricia, was in the kitchen, humming along to the radio while she prepared dinner. 40 years of marriage, and she could still read my mood from across the room. "Ray, what's wrong?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. "How do you tell your wife that her sister's son, the boy we'd helped raise after his father left, just tried to set you up for a drug charge?" "Nothing, honey, just tired." The lie tasted bitter. She studied me for a moment, then returned to her cooking. I kissed her cheek and headed to my study, closing the door behind me. I needed to think. Marcus had been living with us on and off for the past year. After dropping out of school, he'd bounced between jobs, never quite finding his footing. Patricia's sister, Carol, had called us in tears 6 months ago. Marcus had been evicted from his apartment. Could he stay with us just until he got back on his feet? We'd said yes, of course. Family takes care of family. That's what Patricia's father had always taught us. That's what I believed too. But now, sitting in my leather chair with the weight of this secret pressing down on me, I wondered if we'd been too soft, too willing to excuse, to enable, to turn a blind eye to the warning signs that had been there all along. The late nights, the new friends who never came inside, the way he'd started asking for money, small amounts at first, then larger, always with a good reason. Car repairs, job application fees, a security deposit for an apartment he never actually moved into. 3 weeks ago, he'd asked me for $5,000. Said he had an opportunity, a business venture with a friend. When I pressed for details, he'd gotten defensive, accused me of not trusting him. Patricia had intervened, told me to give him space, to believe in him. I'd said no to the money. And now there was cocaine in my toolbox. The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. If I got arrested, charged with possession with intent to distribute, what would happen? I'd lose my contractor's license. My business, built over 30 years, would collapse. Patricia would be devastated. And Marcus, poor, troubled Marcus, would inherit everything we'd worked for when the legal fees drained us dry. No, not poor, troubled Marcus. calculating, desperate, dangerous Marcus. I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a long time. I should call the police, report what he'd done. But he was family. Patricia's nephew, Carol's son, the boy whose birthday cakes I'd helped blow out, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose graduation I'd attended even when his own mother couldn't afford the trip. Family takes care of family. But what does that mean when family tries to destroy you? I thought about my brother, Thomas. Brilliant, charming Thomas, who died 15 years ago from liver failure at 43. He'd been an alcoholic, though we never called it that back then. We'd called it social drinking, blowing off steam, going through a rough patch. We'd made excuses, covered for him, lent him money, bailed him out of trouble. And he died anyway, with a blood alcohol content 3 times the legal limit, alone in a motel room in a town where nobody knew his name. I'd promised myself then that I would never enable someone I loved to death. I'd promised Thomas's ghost that if I ever saw someone heading down that same road, I wouldn't be the one greasing the wheels. But here I was, sitting in my study with evidence of my nephew's crime, paralyzed by the same misguided loyalty that had helped kill my brother. I stood up and walked to the window. Marcus's car was back in the driveway. He'd only been gone 20 minutes. Running an errand, probably. Or maybe meeting whoever had given him those drugs, whoever he owed money to, whoever had convinced him that framing his uncle was a reasonable solution to his problems. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Patricia's garden looked beautiful in this light. She'd spent years cultivating those roses, those tomatoes, that small herb garden by the porch. Patient work, consistent care, love expressed through attention and effort. That's what family was supposed to be. Patient work, consistent care, not this twisted manipulation, this betrayal dressed up in blood relations. I made my decision. I went back to the garage, retrieved the bag from my toolbox, and walked to Marcus's car. It was unlocked, as always. He'd never been careful about things like that. I opened the passenger door and looked around the interior. Fast food wrappers, empty energy drink cans, a sweatshirt crumpled in the back seat. And there, under the driver's seat, partially hidden, I saw the edge of another plastic bag. My hands didn't shake as I reached for it. Inside were at least a dozen more bags like the one he'd planted in my garage. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't just about framing me. Marcus was dealing. I placed the bag from my toolbox back with the others under his seat. Then I pulled out my phone and made the call. Police non-emergency line. How can I help you? I need to report suspicious activity, I said, my voice steady. My nephew has been staying with us, and I just discovered what I believe to be illegal drugs in his vehicle. The operator's voice became more focused. Are you in immediate danger, sir? No, he's inside the house, but I think you should send someone. She took down my information, my address, the make and model of Marcus's car. She told me officers would arrive within 30 minutes. She told me to stay calm, to stay safe, to not confront him. I hung up and sat down on my workbench, looking at Marcus's car. In 28 minutes, everything would change. The police would arrive. They would find the drugs. Marcus would be arrested. Patricia would be heartbroken. Carol would be devastated. The family gatherings would never be the same, and I would have to live with the fact that I'd called the police on my own nephew. But I would also live. My business would survive. Patricia's garden would still bloom next spring. And maybe, just maybe, Marcus would finally face the consequences that everyone else had been shielding him from. Maybe this was what real family looked like. Not protection from consequences, but protection through consequences. The door from the house opened, and Marcus stepped out. He saw me sitting there and froze. Uncle Ray? What are you doing out here? I stood up slowly. Waiting. Marcus. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. Waiting for what? For you to tell me the truth. He tried to laugh it off. Truth about what? You're being weird, man. I found what you put in my toolbox. The blood drained from his face. For a moment, I thought he might run. His eyes darted to his car, to the street, back to me. Then his expression hardened into something I didn't recognize, something that looked nothing like the boy I'd helped raise. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I kept my voice level. And I know why you did it. You need money. You owe someone. You thought if I went to jail, somehow you'd benefit. Or maybe you just needed me out of the way. This is crazy. But his voice was shaking now. You're paranoid, old man. Maybe, I said. But I don't think so. I think you're in over your head, Marcus. I think you made some bad choices, and now you're desperate. I think you're not the person I thought you were. He took a step toward me, and I saw anger flash in his eyes. You don't know anything about my life, about what I've been through. You sit here in your nice house with your nice wife and your nice business, and you judge me? I'm not judging you. I'm trying to understand why you do this to me, to us. We took you in. We helped you. And this is how you repay us? Help? He laughed, bitter and harsh. You helped yourself feel good. You helped yourself play the hero. But when I asked for real help, for actual money to fix my problems, you said no. Because giving you money wouldn't fix anything. It would just delay the inevitable. The inevitable? His voice rose. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're destroying yourself, and I won't help you do it faster. In the distance, I heard sirens. Marcus heard them too. His eyes went wide. What did you do? He whispered. What I should have done a long time ago. I stopped protecting you from yourself. He stared at me, and I saw the moment understanding hit him. He bolted for his car, but I was already standing between him and the driver's door. Get out of my way. No. Uncle Ray, please. The anger crumbled, replaced by panic. Please, don't do this. They'll send me to prison. My life will be over. Your life is already over if you keep going down this path. At least this way, you might get help. Might have a chance to start over. You're supposed to love me. Tears were streaming down his face now. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side, I said, and felt my own eyes burning. This is me loving you, even when it's the hardest thing I've ever done. 2 police cars pulled into the driveway, lights flashing. Officers emerged, hands resting on their duty belts, approaching cautiously. Raymond Cooper? One of them called out. That's me. I stepped away from Marcus, giving them a clear path. The vehicle is there. The drugs are under the driver's seat. Marcus's legs seemed to give out. He sank to his knees on the concrete, sobbing. Please, Uncle Ray. Please don't do this to me. Patricia appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Ray? What's happening? I couldn't look at her. Couldn't bear to see the confusion, the hurt, the betrayal that would come when she understood what I'd done. The officers approached Marcus's car. One of them pulled on gloves, opened the door, and reached under the seat. When his hand emerged holding the bags, his expression hardened. Marcus Cooper? He addressed my nephew. Marcus didn't answer, just kept crying, his whole body shaking. Stand up, please. You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. The Miranda rights, the handcuffs, Patricia's scream, the neighbors emerging from their houses to watch the spectacle. All of it happened in a blur, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I didn't look away. I made myself watch every second, made myself remember the look on Marcus's face as they put him in the back of the police car, made myself hear Patricia's sobbing as she ran to me, demanding to know what I'd done, why I'd done it, how I could betray family like this. He planted drugs in my toolbox, I told her, my voice hoarse. He was trying to frame me, Patricia. And when I looked in his car, I found more. He's dealing. He's been dealing this whole time we've been helping him. She stared at me, disbelief and horror warring on her face. You're lying. Marcus would never. Ask him, I said. When you visit him, ask him if I'm lying. She slapped me. Hard. The sting spread across my cheek, but I didn't move, didn't defend myself, just stood there and took it, because she deserved that anger, deserved to express that pain. Then she ran back into the house, slamming the door behind her. I stood alone in the driveway as the police cars pulled away, Marcus's face visible through the back window. He wasn't crying anymore, just staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Hate, maybe, or understanding, or both. One of the officers had stayed behind to take my statement. I told him everything, the planted drugs, the discovery, my decision to call. He listened, took notes, and handed me a card with a case number. For what it's worth, he said, you did the right thing. This amount. He was looking at serious time if he'd kept going. You might have saved his life. I wanted to believe that. But right then, sitting on my front steps with the officer's card in my hand and my wife crying inside, it didn't feel like salvation. It felt like destruction. The next 3 days were the worst of my life. Patricia wouldn't speak to me, slept in the guest room, moved through the house like a ghost, silent and wounded. Carol called, screaming at me, calling me a traitor, a monster, asking how I could do this to her son. I let her rage. What else could I do? Marcus was denied bail. The amount of cocaine in his car, combined with the evidence of dealing they found on his phone, painted a picture the judge couldn't ignore. He was looking at 5 to 10 years if convicted. Patricia finally spoke to me on the 4th day. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the morning coffee growing cold between us. Carol told me Marcus admitted it, she said, her voice flat. The drugs, the dealing, trying to frame you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She also said, he's been using for 2 years. Started with painkillers after a work injury, moved to cocaine when he couldn't afford the pills anymore. She didn't know about the dealing until now. I'm sorry, I whispered. Are you? Her eyes met mine, red from crying but clear. Are you sorry you called the police? Or sorry you didn't figure it out sooner? Both. Neither. I don't know, Patricia. I just know I couldn't let him drag us down with him. I couldn't be Thomas's enabler all over again. She flinched at the mention of my brother. We rarely talked about Thomas. The wound was too old, too deep. This is different, she said. Is it? Thomas had a family who loved him, who made excuses for him, who gave him money when he asked, second chances when he failed. And he's dead, Patricia. He's been dead for 15 years, and every time I see someone heading down that road, I see him. I see that motel room. I see the coroner's report. Marcus isn't Thomas. No, he's not, because I stopped him before he got there. She stood up, walked to the window. Her roses needed deadheading. I could see her noticing it, that automatic cataloging of tasks that needed doing. Carol wants us to hire him a lawyer, she said. A good one. She can't afford it on her own. I know. Will you? I thought about it, really thought about it. Marcus had tried to destroy me, had planted evidence that could have sent me to prison, ruined everything I'd built. By every reasonable measure, I owed him nothing. But he was still family. Still the kid who'd fallen asleep on my lap during 4th of July fireworks. Still the teenager who'd brought me terrible Father's Day cards made in art class. Still the young man who might, if given the right push, find his way back from the edge. I'll pay for the lawyer, I said. But only if he agrees to go to rehab as part of his plea deal. Real rehab. Not just court-mandated classes. The kind with follow-up and accountability. Patricia turned to look at me, surprise flickering across her features. You'd do that? After everything? I called the police to stop him from destroying himself, not to abandon him completely. There's a difference between enabling and helping, Patricia. I'm still figuring out where that line is, but I think maybe it's here. Consequences plus support. Not one or the other. She walked back to the table and sat down, took my hand in hers, those familiar fingers that had held mine through 30 years of marriage, of joy and sorrow and everything between. I'm still angry at you, she said. I know, but I think I understand why you did it. That's more than I hoped for. We sat like that for a long time, holding hands across the table, two people trying to figure out how to love someone enough to let them fall, enough to catch them, enough to tell the difference. 6 months later, I visited Marcus in a rehab facility 2 hours north. The lawyer I'd hired had negotiated a deal, 3 years in a treatment program instead of 5 in prison. Marcus had to plead guilty, had to accept responsibility, but he'd agreed. He looked different, healthier, somehow. The gauntness was gone from his face. His eyes were clearer. When he saw me in the visitor's room, he didn't look away. Uncle Ray, he said, sitting down across from me. Marcus. An awkward silence stretched between us. I'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times in my head, but now that I was here, all my prepared words felt inadequate. I'm sorry, he said finally, for what I did, for what I tried to do to you. I know. I was desperate. Owed money to people who don't take no for an answer. Thought if you went away, Aunt Patricia would help me. She's always been softer than you. He laughed, bitter. Stupid plan. Desperate plan. Did you really think it would work? I wasn't thinking. That's the problem. When you're using, when you're in that deep, you stop thinking past the next hit, the next score, the next disaster you need to avoid. You told me my life was over. You were right, it was. But maybe now I get to start a new one. I pulled an envelope from my pocket and slid it across the table. Patricia wanted me to give you this. He opened it carefully. Inside were photos. Patricia's garden in full bloom. Our dog, Murphy. A picture of the three of us from 5 years ago, before everything went wrong. She says she'll come visit next month, I told him. If you want her to. His hands were shaking as he held the photos. I want her to. I want you both to. I know I don't deserve it. But this isn't about deserving, Marcus. It's about family. About figuring out how to love people without destroying ourselves in the process. You saved my life, he said quietly. By calling the cops. I didn't understand that night. I hated you. But if you hadn't stopped me, I'd be dead now. The people I owed money to, they weren't patient. Another week, maybe 2, and they would have killed me rather than keep chasing payment. I hadn't known that. Felt the weight of it settle over me like a blanket, heavy and warm and suffocating all at once. What you did, he continued, calling the police, making me face it, that was love. It took me a long time to see it, but it was. The hardest kind of love. The kind that doesn't feel good. We talked for another hour. About his treatment, his plans, his fears. About my business. Patricia's garden. The deck I'd finally finished. Small things. Normal things. The kind of conversation I'd thought we might never have again. When visiting hours ended, Marcus stood and surprised me by pulling me into a hug. I held him tight. This young man I'd failed and saved in equal measure. Thank you, he whispered, for not giving up on me, even when you had to give me up. I drove home as the sun set, the same orange and red sky I'd watched from my study window 6 months ago. But something was different now. Lighter, maybe. Or maybe just clearer. Patricia was in the garden when I pulled up, deadheading her roses in the fading light. I joined her, kneeling beside her in the dirt, and told her about my visit with Marcus. He looks good, I said. Better than I've seen him in years. She snipped a dead bloom and tossed it in her bucket. Carol called this morning. Said she's starting to understand why you did it. She's not ready to forgive yet, but she understands. That's more than I expected. Me too. She sat back on her heels, looking at me. You know, my father used to say that family takes care of family. But I don't think he meant it the way we always interpreted it. I think he meant family does what's necessary, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Your father was a wise man. He was. And so are you, Ray, even when I wanted to hate you for it. We finished the garden work together. 2 people learning to redefine love. To understand that sometimes holding on means letting go. That sometimes saving someone means watching them fall. The house went up for sale the following month. Not because we had to, but because we chose to. Patricia wanted a fresh start, away from the memories of that night, that garage, that driveway where our nephew had been arrested. We found a smaller place across town, closer to her sister, close enough to visit Marcus when he eventually transitioned to outpatient care. Before we left, I stood in my old garage one last time, looking at the empty shelves where my toolbox had been. I thought about Thomas, about Marcus, about all the people we try to save and all the ways we fail and succeed and fail again. Family takes care of family. But sometimes that means making the hardest call. Sometimes it means choosing between being comfortable and being kind. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, it means watching someone you love fall, knowing you pushed them, hoping they'll learn to fly on the way down. Marcus called me last week. He's been sober 8 months now, working part-time at the facility where he stayed, helping other people who are where he used to be. His voice on the phone was steady, clear, whole. I'm thinking about going back to school, he told me. Counseling, maybe. Addiction therapy. Turn all this mess into something useful. That sounds good, Marcus? Really good. Uncle Ray, I just wanted to say, I get it now. What you did, why you did it, and I'm grateful. Even though it was the worst night of my life, I'm grateful it happened. After we hung up, I sat on my back porch, watching Patricia's new garden take root. Smaller than the old one, but growing. Everything grows, given time and the right conditions. Even broken things. even broken people. God's love for us includes teaching us to value the life He gave us enough to protect it, even from family. Sometimes, especially from family. Sometimes from ourselves. And in learning to protect, we learn to love, really love, the hard, uncomfortable, necessary kind of love that saves lives even when it breaks hearts. That's what family means, not just blood and shared history, but the courage to do what's right even when everything in you screams to do what's easy. The strength to stand between someone you love and the cliff they're running toward, even knowing they'll hate you for it. I did what I had to do. Marcus is alive because of it. Our family is healing because of it. And somewhere, I hope Thomas is resting easier, knowing that this time, I didn't make the same mistake. This time, I loved someone enough to let them face the consequences. This time, I got it right.